Hi friends, this is Chris. Welcome back to the channel. So I want to give you an update what's going on in the financial markets today. I'll share my thoughts and I want to get yours as well. So first, the big story is oil, and there's a lot of fear that the oil production will be in trouble. What do I mean by that? And this is sort of why you track these things, is like if the cost of oil goes up because we can't produce enough to meet demand, then suddenly everything becomes more expensive, right? So like today, Brent crude surges above 80 as conflict and storms, spark supply fears. That was the headline. Basically, you have Israel may or may not be attacking Iran. They may hit their oil production in the coming days. There's been a lot of chatter about that. I mean, is Israel really going to attack Iran? I don't know. I mean, you have to ask Israel. And will this conflict spread, further? The other issue as well is the storm, as I mentioned in the headline, is that there's another storm heading towards southeast part of the USA. I believe this is called Hurricane Milton. This is after the one that we were dealing with still, the Hurricane Helene, or at least the after effects of it. And so yeah, we have another storm coming in. So it's really, really tough for people living in the southeast. And then the storm not only will disrupt, people's homes and the infrastructure, it's also going to maybe hurt the oil production. You can't predict storms 100%, but there is a worry of that in the USA. The other issue as well is hedge funds, and this is something that you'll see in markets if you want to understand this stuff. Hedge funds previously where I guess were short oil, so they were betting that oil was going to go down. And sometimes these kind of things happen. You get crazy storms, you get possible war expanding in the Middle East, and then everything changes, right? The equation changes. So no longer is oil going down, and you got to get out of those bets. So a lot of these people who were short are now going long, or at least covering their shorts, and that's why you get these kind of crazy fluctuations in the market. And this kind of tells me, and this is something that we see a lot, there's still a lot of leverage in out there, right? And so what's nuts about this stuff is, like, if the Fed's talking about cutting rates and printing again, we already got enough leverage in the market as it is. But like I guess that's just our new normal. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. But there was a fascinating story in Bloomberg today, and it was about there's a rise of a bunch of these ETFs being promoted on social media. So I was unaware of this because I can't watch every single channel out there, but I heard about these things a little bit. So basically, there's a ton of leveraged ETFs out there these days. And I guess some of these are saying, hey, you can get like 100% yield, no problem. You're going to be making money on this stuff. And it's just basically leveraged ETFs. They're very, very popular, very, very risky. And, a lot of retail investors aren't really clear kind of what these things are. JP Morgan actually issued a statement regarding this thing. And it was very interesting because they wanted to essentially warn people about the dangers of this stuff. Let me read what they said here. So this is coming from JP Morgan. They say, I can give you more on this, more of that. All you have to do is let me use leverage, right? They say, there's always somebody that says, I can give you more of this, more of that. All you have to do is let me use leverage, right? And they always talk about more of the positive side, but it also means more of the negative side. No one ever talks about that side of the equation, right? And so I bring this up specifically because this is sort of when, people, and this is part of YouTube, guys, it's like everyone's a cheerleader, right? And with cheerleaders, they only want to, tell you the positive. And if you borrow more money, that means you'll make more money. Oh my God, it's awesome. And if you actually tell people the risks, if you tell people the negatives, people actually get kind of upset, which is unfortunate. And that's just sort of how YouTube is played. And it's frustrating for me, and I try to emphasize this again over and over, but much of your audience on YouTube are young. They're young people, they're inexperienced, and so they just don't know any better, or maybe they do know better, but it's not fun. I don't know, you can ask them. But I try my best, and this is something that for any investment, anything that you do in life, know the risks, right? Managing money is a lot about managing risk. It doesn't mean risk is bad, right? Part of investing is risking. Like, I'm giving money to a company, and I'm hoping that they're going to use that money, and they're going to, spend it on their employees, and spend it on their research, and spend it on their marketing, and getting their products out there, and hoping that people will come buy their products. That's basically what it is. I'm giving my money to someone else. It's an investment. But you have to understand the risks of this stuff, right? So when you give your money to said things, like, what's your market share, or what's your product timeline, any number of stuff. And this is the kind of stuff that I like to talk about, like, reasonably on the channel, and I like to talk about with you guys, is like evaluating this kind of stuff. I give you my opinions, and I know, and what I really like about our community is that there's a lot of you out there that one, want to learn, and also two, want to share ideas. So I always encourage you guys to share stuff in comments. I learn from you every single day. That's why I love doing this channel. It's frankly, it's really fun. For example, something I learned the other day was, or just yesterday, I can say it was yesterday, not the other day, but yesterday, someone was saying in Switzerland, they've cut the EV tax credits, there. So then they expect electric vehicles to go down in sales there because it's not like, free to buy these things. I think it was something like, if you buy them in Switzerland, there's no sale tax or something like that. And, understanding that kind of stuff and learning those kind of things, like, I learn from you every day. I don't study Switzerland. I don't live in Switzerland. I don't know. But I like learning that. Or someone was saying, I think it was like Belgium, they were saying, here in Belgium, we save money, and that's, our culture is different than USA. Or someone in Germany was saying like debt means guilt. And I didn't know that. I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting. Like, just how people think about stuff. And so, when I bring up this stuff of like, when JP Morgan, I'll read the quote again, I thought it was an interesting one. He says, there's always somebody that says, I can give you more of this, more of that. All you have to do is let me use leverage. And they always talk about more of the positive side, but it also means more of the negative side. No one ever talks about that side of the equation. And, I just think that's learning, that's investing, is like, how does the world really work? Other stuff going on in the market. So what's interesting, and when I mentioned, like, there's all of these ETFs out there and YouTubers promoting it, and essentially Wall Street is lining up to make these leverage ETFs, right? So, don't think that Wall Street is a monolithic place of just one person and one opinion. There's all kinds of people giving all kinds of opinions, and there's all kinds of people trying to sell you all kinds of products, right? And then so what you have to do is like navigate through essentially the BS, and it's hard, guys. It's hard. I read this stuff every day, and it's like it's hard because it is real. Sometimes you can make a crap ton of money on hype, or you can make a crap ton of money selling BS, and that's what is popular to talk about on this channel. And I think for a lot of people, they know the BS is out there, and it's hard to determine what it is. And again, I go back to why I like doing this and having a community to talk about the issues of the day. So today we're talking about oil and the storm, and are we worried about production? And that'd be two questionable events. Questionable meaning I don't know. I don't know how bad the storm is going to be in the southeast part of the USA. I can't, I can read the news, but I'm not a weather person. I just follow along. Or, how bad the war is going to get in the Middle East, right? I can't predict that kind of stuff. And this is part of financial markets, is managing uncertainty and managing risk. So anyway, that's why I like to talk with you guys about this stuff. Other thing that was kind of interesting is I've noticed Goldman Sachs and others have been like really pushing the China equities, right? So saying, hey, you got to invest in China. There's another 15 to 20% up on there. Okay, so the China one's an interesting one. They might be right. I mean, they might be right because Beijing, that's they made a thing recently, a stimulus package to like pump up stocks, pump up real estate, that kind of stuff, and everything goes to the moon. Who knows? Maybe. The problem is though is that you're dealing with lack of transparency over there, and the government can do anything that it wants, right? So who knows? Like, who knows when you read about, companies, are their books even real numbers? Who knows? So that's why if you are going to get involved in China stuff, and I mentioned it before, your safest bet is just buy some sort of China ETF that's like a basket of stocks, and you don't have to worry about, which company scam, which is not, because you never know. But some of the stuff that's going on in China right now is they're asking for passports of, I guess, public sector people. And they're basically saying that you can't leave the country without permission. And so this goes back to like, is it worth it to invest in China when the government's doing this kind of stuff? This was the headline. China tells school teachers to hand in their passports. Like, what the heck is that? I'll read some more details. The passport collection drive, carried out under what is known as, quote, personal travel abroad management, allows local government officials to control and monitor who can travel abroad, how often, and to where. And controlling people's movements, guys, that's a major, how can I say, like, restriction on freedom. And this is something I always mention on the channel, like when Elon Musk says he's about free speech and freedom of stuff like that, he never mentions China because he's in China, in bed with China to make money or whatever. Guys, I used to work in China. I write my book about it. Well, China's a part of the book just because I've done a lot of things, but it's called Positive Angle. Please check it out. It's on Amazon. But if you want to hear my stories about this stuff and sort of like choices that I made, I'll just put it simply. A lot of things that I were uncomfortable with, so I left, right? Everyone has to make their choice in life. Is money worth it? Is money, worth suppressing people or limiting people's freedom? That kind of stuff. Everyone's got to make their choice in that. For me, it's not. So money isn't everything to me. That's my opinion. And I want to make this really clear. Like, and I feel deeply sad when I read these things. I'll read some quotes, but to me, when I talk to you with you guys about other countries, guys, I've been to these places. I have friends in these places. I used to live in China, and I feel very sad if someone's like taking your passport and say you can't leave. Here's an example. These are teachers that they talk to. A quote from a teacher in China. If we want to travel abroad, we have to apply to the City Education Bureau, and I don't think it'll be approved. Again, that's from a teacher in China. Here's another teacher. If we want to travel abroad, we have to apply to, I was an English major. My lifelong dream is to visit an English-speaking country, but it feels like that is about to be shattered. And again, that's coming from a teacher that, and that's, just imagine if your major is English and you just want to go practice in another country, or you just want to go on vacation or whatever number or reasons. You got to ask like your boss / government for approval. I mean, I just feel really sad for that kind of stuff. And like I said, I know for people who've never been in other countries, it's just someone in another country. I don't care about them. But to me, these are real people. And just think about how you would feel if you wanted to go take a trip to anywhere and you had to ask the government for approval. So I'm really down on that, and I feel really sorry about that. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Other things that are going on also in the market, which I thought interesting. I've actually seen several stories on this one, and this is sort of where you look for opportunities in the market and you say, okay, is the risk worth it? Where's the opportunity, et cetera? So one, I mentioned the China one. Another one, I talked about the generator thing. Another one is actually water shortages. I keep seeing stories about this, and someone gave an estimate. They were saying here maybe water is going to be like, and kind of the problems are going to be maybe 10 to 15% every year. We're going to be having problems with this stuff. Is my understanding of it. So the water will increase, and water problems because, well, there's obviously lots of reasons why we need water. One, we need drinking water, but the other one is like, I guess you need energy, requires a lot of water as well. And I've heard this stuff before, and I've looked into it, and I've seen reports on multiple things. So for whatever reason, we're building chips in the USA. I think it's Arizona. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the state, but I think it's basically the desert. I think it was Intel's down there and maybe some other companies, and it's like, why are we building, chip factories there? Well, obviously, it's politics. That's part of the world. I'm not shocked by this stuff. Maybe the land is cheap. Maybe you're trying to, garner votes down there, or whatever. But then, like when you're building stuff in the desert and it requires a lot of power and you need a lot of water, there's that, right? And the other issue where you're trying to build chips and they may need a lot of water is Saudi Arabia, which is actually, it's not just Saudi. It's just, we'll just say Middle East, because there's multiple companies. I think Dubai's in this stuff, and UAE and et cetera, like are different places. I know Dubai is not a country, but I'm just saying that I always say Saudi, Dubai. It's funny when you read articles about how it mentions like cities, and sometimes it'll refer it to other ways. But point being, though, we're trying to build chips in places that maybe aren't so hospitable. They don't have the water supply, so we're trying to figure out how to do that. And then you have the drinking water thing as well. Another thing which I want to mention is well, that was also in the news, was the Google situation. This was an interesting one. So actually, Google and Apple are affected by this. Do they have a monopoly in their app stores or not, right? And it was Epic Games that sued because basically they want to be able to like have their own app on there, process their payments on there, and then you can download games on there, meaning that Epic's app will sort of be, I don't know if independent's the right word, we'll just say separate from Google's app, or say Apple's app, because whenever Google or Apple have their app, I think it's really high. I think it's like a 30% cut, something like that, right? And so whether or not like this kind of judgment holds, like with this stuff, Google, Apple, whatever, these big tech companies have really good lawyers, so I'm sure they'll fight it. But this one's in the EU though, so EU is different than the USA, and judgments will be different. My understanding though is I think Google has recently ruled a monopoly in USA. But what's the actual, what do I say, final conclusion, final judgment, final penalty? Who knows? That hasn't yet been decided. But I guess this one on the Epic Games is actually a really big one in Europe. And Europe's, again, they're a little bit more regulatory on that. There's another issue as well, which I thought was an interesting one. I guess there's a Saudi public fund. It's called the Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund. They're buying up shares of Nintendo of all things, right? The video game company. And there's two things I want to say about this. So one is, I've been reading a lot of stuff that in Saudi Arabia, they know maybe oil isn't the future, right? Because there'll be other sources of energy. and they want to, diversify their investments essentially. So one is crypto, right? You got people in the Middle East that are all about crypto, that kind of stuff. Two is chips. And then this is new to me, I guess, in video games. I'll be curious if there are more, investments coming in the Middle East to buy video games. And, also when you see, say, downturns in stocks, you see recessions, this kind of stuff, not everything goes to zero, right? There's certain things like Nintendo eventually gets to a price to where like people start licking their chops and like, it's time to jump in. And that's sort of like just a reminder that, when you do buy stocks, you are buying ownerships in real companies that make money. I know sometimes when you look at your account, for many people, well, in this day and age, with say cryptos and that kind of stuff, you don't really connect the digital world to the real world. You just think of it as being like numbers on a screen. But yeah, it's ownership in a company. And if these companies have valuable products and valuable brands, it's going to be worth something, of course. And so evidently, Saudi Arabia, they think Nintendo's worth something. And that's the question I pose to you. Is it? I would say yes. But I know that there's a lot more competition today than there was yesterday. And for young kids, I don't know if they're into Mario. I really don't know. For my generation, I'm 49. I always mention my age, because it matters in your experience. But I grew up with Nintendo and stuff like that. We played Super Nintendo all the time. Who didn't, right? And I'll prove it. It was like up, up, down, down, left, right, A, B, right? Who doesn't know that? So anyway, I always appreciate you watching, everyone. And I'll catch you on the next video.